And so it's come to this, our final category, the main event, 2020's Game of the Year. Previous winners in 2015, we had The Witcher number 1, Metal Gear Solid 5 number 2, and Super Mario Maker number 3. 2016, Hitman number 1, Doom number 2, Superhot number 3. 2017, we had joint winners of Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey, and then third place was Cuphead. 2018, Marvel's Spider-Man number 1, God of War number 2, Celeste number 3, and last year, Ape Out number 1, Control number 2, The Outer Wilds number 3.
By the way, just reading through those that you've just read through, how badly does last year stick out as a year where it just wasn't in the same league as the 4 years that had come before?
I was thinking the exact same thing.
And you're like, oh my god, these games are insanely great. Like, every single one of them could easily be a Game of the Year winner. And then you get to last year, and I love Ape Out, and Control's cool and all of that, and Outer Wilds was good, but it wasn't getting the top 3 of any of those other years.
I love Control. It's one of my favorite games of the last few years. But I will concede that I think last year was kind of a down year for big kind of generational shifts in kind of, it was the year where we struggled the most to go, this is the home run game months and months ahead of time. Like, I think particularly in 2016 was the year where from very early on we all knew it was coming down to Hitman and Doom. From very early on in 2017 we knew it was coming down to Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey. Last year was pretty open, and I think in some respects this year is pretty open as well.
I think this year is open, but I think the difference is there are actually a number of very strong titles. So the sentiment that we have from last year, I definitely don't think. I think we're back on the upswing this year.
I think there's some real heavy hitters on our list we're going to get to, but I have kind of felt like overall this has not been a great year. I think because I think it's kind of like if you look at like 2017, like you have those 3 absolutely phenomenal, will be on all-time great lists when it's all in 50 years time: Breath of the Wild, Mario, Cuphead. And I'm sure like other stuff that came out in 2017 would blow your fucking mind. That was like Yakuza 0 was that year as well, I'm fairly sure. Whereas this year it's like there's like a big disparity between like the games I think that we're really going to debate on this list, and then there's lots of like solid little things that are fun and stuff like that.
There's a big gap.
There's a big, like, even looking at like just my own nominations, I'm just like, all this stuff. I wouldn't fight for most of this on most other years, realistically.
Yeah, and just to pull back the curtain a little bit, since we've been going through the recordings and doing all of this, the fucking Cyberpunk situation, which I thought would be
this is it. I think
in this category,
I think this is the year.
Off a cliff.
I think this is the year where a lot of the biggest games have not ended up the way we thought they were going to be, and Cyberpunk is chief among them for a multitude of reasons, and probably a multitude more by the time this show comes out. But yeah, it's an unusual year, and I'm kind of coming into this. It's probably the first year where I'm coming into it without a strong, this is the one I'm going to champion. So I'm interested to see where this conversation goes. But look, before we dig into it, let's go through the nominees. The Last of Us Part 2, Fall Guys, Paradise Killer, Ghost of Tsushima, Ori and the Will of the Wisp, Half-Life Alyx, Doom Eternal, Paper Mario the Origami King, Wide Ocean Big Jacket, Spiritfairer, Hades, If Found, Ghostrunner, The Pedestrian, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Tell Me Why, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Gears Tactics, Astro's Playroom, and The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. And before we start going around talking the Wheel of Fate and all that, just remind everybody that we will be getting this down to an ordered list of 3. So we're going to keep cutting until we get to 3 and then try and decide our order before we even think about going to a poll.
Also, I don't know if anyone else will have any kind of like things they want to give a shout out to that maybe they didn't get to nominate in time. I will give a quick shout out to Star Wars Squadrons. It's definitely not anywhere near kind of game of the year. I think it probably could make like a top 10 for me. I think that's actually a really good, well done dogfight type. You know, if you think back to Lilac Wars with those dogfight stages, it's really enjoyable to play, and that's even without being able to play in VR, which I imagine would be even more of an immersive experience. So yeah, just wanted to give a shout out to Star Wars Squadrons. It can go on, then it can come straight back off.
Okay. Right, we're kicking off Game of the Year with Barry.
Oh wow, really? Okay. Well, in the vein of the multiplayer award, I will take off something that I think only I played, and it was a VR title. Walking Dead: Saints and Sinners is really damn cool. It is really cool. It is effectively like a quasi open world thing. You've got like a little hub and then a city divided into sections. So it's not complete open world. But it is a sort of story-driven survival horror game where you are, you're Resident Eviling it up a bit, basically. You're Last of Us-ing a little bit. You are trying to go and solve story missions, but along the way you have to kind of be emptying every drawer you come across, search every nook and cranny for crafting materials, and bits and bobs to survive. You have a health and a stamina meter to maintain. There's a whole lot going on. It's very ambitious for a VR game, which is what really impressed me. There are 10 million things you can get on the quest where you stand on a spot and you shoot a zombie, and most of it is very, very unsatisfying. But Saints and Sinners is really, really great. It combines the ambition and the mechanics of a normal survival horror game like a Resident Evil, but it doesn't compromise any of its VR-ness, for lack of a better term, which I really, really appreciate. So there's that real... It's one of those things where I kind of feel like in 5 years, this studio or other people who will be inspired by this game are going to make a really fucking incredible game in VR in this ilk. Just little things like, scrambling around for some health food items, but in the process a zombie finds me. But because I'm in the kitchen, I found a spoon, and I just instinctively picked it up and stabbed them in the head with the spoon that I just found. Little immersive moments like that really make you feel like, hey, they've torn down the wall here from the traditional survival horror experience, and they've made it VR in a way that I really appreciate. Big huge thumbs up to that. If anyone has a VR headset and wants a kind of immersive survival horror game that is not jump scare heavy as well, because I don't have a lot of patience for that in VR. I can't recommend that game enough. It's my favorite VR game I played this year. But of course, it can come off.
Okay, Mark, you're next.
I would have this game higher, but I know that I am very much the high man. I know Barry didn't think much of it, and I don't think Jack played it. I can't remember how much you played of it, Dave. I think Ghostrunner is exactly the type of game that I would enjoy, where it just fucking, let's not even bother with the story. Let's just give a tight, adrenaline-fueled experience that takes like the best parts of the high-octane moments of Doom, with some of the parkour that does work in Mirror's Edge, with the enemy placement puzzle box design of a Hotline Miami, where you have alternative routes to go around an environment to pick off enemies. I think that game absolutely nails that part of what it's going for. Again, the story is a weekend of watching RoboCop and Blade Runner, but that never kind of detracted from just keep on going forward at all times. And I had a great time for the 9-10 hours that lasted. The last level is very much that kind of perfect climax of everything that you've learned up to that point, putting it to use and finding a way to deal with all of the platforming challenges that come at you. They do a really good job of giving you different enemies that challenge you to approach from different angles, where you have some where you have to kind of hide and wait till the last second, some where you have to sort of jump over the top of them to slash them from behind. different types of ways that enemies will fire at you. You have like these ninjas that come fucking firing at you very quickly, so you have to use your parry attack to then attack them. So sometimes you can't always just go forward. You have these kind of monstrosities that just keep chasing after you, and you can't kill them. So, you know, not only are you going around this environment, now you have to keep sort of proximity to the fact that you've got these kamikaze creatures that are coming after you, so you're constantly having to move and using the grappling hook to, you know, keep a safe distance between you and them. And yeah, I really enjoyed the demo, and it's a game that completely, you know, far exceeded my expectations off of the demo. But again, I definitely am aware of the room and knowing that I am the high man on this. So I'm just making life easy for myself by taking this off now. So I've said my piece. Ghostrunner's amazing. And yeah.
Okay. I'm up next. Doom Eternal. Is that fuck getting within an arse's roar of the top 3? I will sooner fucking die on this hill than see it move a minute further in this conversation. And you can all fuck yourselves if you try and defend it at this point.
I could not.
I think I've said on at least 4 different occasions this year that the Super Gore Nest level is way too fucking long, and that alone is for me just, yeah, the game is just far too excessive.
I think I did nominate it when I was playing it for the first couple of hours, and I was like, I don't know what everyone's problem is. This is great. I feel like it's we've cut the promos on that. For sure.
What would the odds be if Dave cut in Doom first in this game of the year? Like, if someone had told me that this was going to happen at the start of the year, oh my god, no chance.
I don't know if it's the same like Mordor situation. I don't think it's as extreme as that, because like I don't think
it wasn't
Dave was
insulting.
anywhere near. Yeah, I don't think Dave was anywhere near the type of promo, because I think the key thing here is that a lot of Doom Eternal actually is good, and it's really good, but it's just so bogged down by all of the unnecessary additions, and that's kind of makes it what's frustrating.
Yeah. The ways in which Mordor was fucked were myriad and gross and trying to make money off people, and it had been a surprise package in 2015 when that first one came out. It was so good, and it was just kind of, it was enraging and disappointing when it was only the second one in the franchise, and they would have got away with just basically doing the same game again, that they fucked it so badly. Whereas with Doom, I think there is maybe less egregiously wrong with it, because it is a victim of excess more than anything else about the game. You know, it's not broken, it's not as exploitative in a number of ways as Mordor was, but it, on a personal level, it's profoundly more disappointing and saddening to me, because it's literally the first game I ever played was Doom 93. So it kind of, even though it doesn't make me as angry as Mordor, it makes me sadder than Mordor when a bad Doom game comes out, is the best way I can describe it. Jack.
Okay. I see everyone's been so diplomatic, and they're taking off games that they like that they don't think are going to win. So I don't know whether I should continue that or just take a random swipe at.
Just take a swipe, spice it up, baby.
Yeah, if there's, especially if there's like the stuff on this list that we have talked about. You know what I mean? And there's a couple of ones on here that are neat, but we know aren't going to win. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Alright, I'm going to take a swipe just because before I did the research for this, I thought it was a song by Cake. Wide Ocean, Big Jacket.
So Wide Ocean, Big Jacket was, I think, the first time this year where I became Story Guy Robinson. And it got a review on Eurogamer, and it came up with recommended, and they're like, yeah, just play over the weekend, you know, it's like 90 minutes. And I was like, you know what? I have 90 minutes to spare. Why not? We'll jump into it. And it has a lot of similarities tonally and in the narrative or in the dialogue to Donut County. And as much as I enjoyed just the sheer aspect of creating very large holes and making things fall into it, the thing that I genuinely enjoyed the most about Donut County was the tone of the writing. And a lot of that carries over, or I see in Wide Ocean Big Jacket. And it's like you have a story of two kids and their aunt and the aunt's husband, and it's just they have a weekend camping trip away. And within that, you just have the kind of awkward relationship between the kids and like their aunt that they kind of get on with, and their husband who they don't really have much of a relationship with. So they're all just trying to kind of integrate and get on with each other. But they're just these tiny kind of little stories that happen, and it has that kind of sharp, snappy, witty writing that's very enjoyable. And I like the direction of. You don't just go from one character to the next and the writing continues. Like you'll have the camera fixed, say like this, they're all sitting around the campfire, and the camera will get fixed in the middle, and you kind of have to go and like the camera snaps between each character, and it has like their name or whatever dialogue, and then you pick, and then it goes into the dialogue. And it has like one of my favorite moments of the year where the kid is talking to the aunt, and she kind of just randomly asks like, "Hey, is sex cool? Is sex a thing that I should be doing?" And the aunt's just like, "Oh, I'm not the person that wants to be having this fucking conversation right now." And it's just it's very amusing how that kind of story, the conversation between them unfolds. And it has just a number of kind of little nice heartwarming moments. It has that low poly art style that has become sort of this generation's pixel art thing, where just everyone's doing it, but I never get tired of it. I think it's you can create some really interesting and still very humane characters out of that style. And it's not a game that has like much in terms of gameplay or mechanics. You're just kind of walking from one area to the next, or picking up this item, dropping it over here. But like as a 90-minute piece of content, I really felt by the end of it that I actually had kind of gone somewhere for the weekend and had this little kind of trip away. And then when the game ended, I kind of snapped out of it and realized, oh, I'm back in my room, and life continues. But it made a really big impression on me. I very much enjoyed it for what it was. It ended right when it needed to. And yeah, like honestly, like I think it was on Switch. I played it on PC. But games like that, stuff like Sayonara Wild Hearts last year, that's a couple of hours. You can play through in a sitting if you want to, but just leaves a sort of lasting impression, does something that's unique, that just has even just one little kind of feature to it that is like, I haven't seen that before. That kind of left an impression with me. I will always go for those types of experiences. I have other games on this category that fit that mold, that just do it better or do something more interesting, whatever. But yeah, I really enjoyed Wide Ocean Big Jacket, and I would give it a recommendation to anyone. But it is not in the top 3. No way near.
Okay,
I just want to say, I know, Barry, you played it. I know you had the beach in the best storytelling moment. I didn't know, like, we've never had a conversation about it. I didn't know what your thoughts were.
It's lovely. I mean, it is so sweet and charming. And I just thought that the beach was just, I don't know, again, there was something just so kind of quietly charming about it, and kind of like when you look at like the best moments category, it doesn't really have the bombast or the, I can't point to a particular line or thing I liked about it. It's just very, very sweet, and I greatly appreciated it. I think it's there's only 3 on this list, and obviously I think it's a perfectly fair cut at this stage, but it's great. It is great.
Back around to Barry.
Yeah. I don't want to be boring and just cut one of my own.
Yeah, let's fucking get the spices going, all right? Come on.
Let's go spice. Fall Guys isn't winning this. It's not getting in top 3.
No,
we gave it its flowers in multiplayer. Great game. One of the, if we were talking about what are the most 2020 games, it's like Fall Guys, Among Us, and Animal Crossing, and Last of Us. But in terms of overall quality, I think it would struggle. But we gave it a good send off in multiplayer.
I feel like Fall Guys is the Untitled Goose Game of this year in some ways. In terms of like the
memeable.
that memeable.
Yeah.
Penetration. culturally, and the
Ooh,
thing that
talk
you
about
see.
spicy.
Hey, that thing that just that game that is just constantly, other than the discourse for Last of Us, just a game that is just non-stop on Twitter, with it's memeable. It's very memeable, and yeah, we've spoken at length ad nauseum about it, and but really, in the grand scheme of things, if you're wearing your silly trousers that day and dressed up like a bean, maybe you could make a case for it. But I do think there are a number of games that just, as a game, are just way stronger, do just more interesting things, better things, whatever the case may be. But if someone wanted to have Fall Guys as their game of the year or in their top 3, I'm not going to fight them on it. Same way I wouldn't have fought for those that said Untitled Goose Game last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's a top 3 game. I would say it would be probably a top 5 game for me. But yeah, I don't see it winning the category, but it just fucking rules, man. It's just a good time. And I think a lot of what I look for in video games, I've mentioned this before, is I'm either looking for like something that's artistically moving in some way, or something that just makes me feel positive and happy, and it definitely falls in the latter category. The best games are the games that bring both to the table, and there's a couple of games on this list that do bring both to the table for me. Fortunately, Fall Guys isn't one of them, but it is the best version of what something like it could be, if that makes sense. Like, Fall Guys is a perfection of a formula of what a good, like, random, bizarre multiplayer battle royale, WarioWare, wannabe, Takeshi's Castle thing could possibly be. They fucking nailed it. So yeah, we've given it a good send off here, and it deservedly won multiplayer. And yeah, there's not much more to say on it, I don't think.
Okay, sticking with you, Mark.
Right, while we're in the process, or in this little moment of taking swipes, as I've mentioned previously, I found the story at points to be quite dull. I found the puzzles, when they are there, to be either completely obtuse or just not that enjoyable to kind of break apart. I found the character direction and voice acting at points to be pretty irritating. I just did not enjoy my time with Tell Me Why, and I don't think it's a top 3 game.
Yeah, I was thinking that this was going to get cut. I think... I don't know if it makes my top 3, which is why I think it's very hard for me to argue for it to stay on this list anyway. But I do think it is just a continuation of what Don't Nod do best. I think they're brilliant storytellers. They really bring to me, and I think this. I know you say that kind of wasn't the case for you, Mark, but it was for me. I thought they really brought the stories here to life, and there's always a little bit of that supernatural element in a Don't Nod game, whether it's like Max's time powers and abilities in Life is Strange, or like the weird jumping from Life is Strange 2 that they have in there, and like telekinesis, and here it's like you're really digging into people's subconscious and trying to extract memories of something that's so traumatic to the two main characters who've clearly had very difficult lives for very different reasons up to this point, to try and make sense, gathering in this area where this incident took place all the years ago that led them to lose their mother, and trying to understand what had happened and the emotional weight and impact that it had on them, and looking at it different ways, and just seeing if they can reconcile. And I think it does it so well. It's done really poignantly. I mean, it's revolutionary in the sense that we have like a trans character and as one of the main characters, and how the world around Tyler deals with Tyler's transition initially, and when Tyler comes back and he's now comfortable within himself, but he's dealt with all of the things in his life that troubled him around that, and now he's still got this thing with what led to the death of his mother that's been hanging over him for his whole life, and it has a kind of a catharsis of in a way, but it's not like a massive emotional release at the end of the game. It's just a sort of like the two main characters have to go on and kind of now they've reframed this big incident that's happened to them, and how they're going to move on with their lives, and in a way I think that's good, because I don't think dealing with trauma is a quick fix. I don't think looking back at something horrible, and everyone will have something horrible that's happened in their past, and there are times where you're not even thinking about it, but there are also times where it will pop back up again, and that's why I kind of like the end of this game, in that we're not like reaching a sort of big massive conclusion of like, right, now we've dealt with this and we can move on forever, because the world isn't like that, life isn't like that, and I don't think any studio really writes with the same emotional depth as Don't Nod. They get me every fucking time with their games. There's points in their games where like it moves me to tears. There are points in their games where I'm just so happy that something awesome's happened to one of the characters in it. They don't play like a sort of traditional video game. You're not walking into a Don't Nod game thinking about like, oh right, yeah, I gotta level up this skill or do this puzzle or whatever. It's very much you have to base yourself in the narrative, and I guess it's a miss for Mark, because like if the storyline doesn't get him, then there's not an awful lot more to it than that. But I really liked Tell Me Why. I really like everything the studio do, and man, I had to card promo for it, and I'm happy to let it go, but I just, fucking Don't Nod, man. They're magicians, and I hope they keep going and doing their thing.
I just feel as well, like the whole thing with the memories and you going to like a point in the area where the memories are to sort of, trigger the next cutscene. I don't know, I didn't feel like there was that much to it. There wasn't a lot of like agency about, having maybe different memories to go to. I know you can like pick what the reaction you think that specific memory was, like whether, oh no, they were angry in this moment or they were sad in this moment. But I don't know, I didn't feel like there was a lot of depth to it, and it just feels like it felt more like a gimmick than a gameplay mechanic, where I didn't feel that even for the short amount of time that I played Life is Strange, that core feature of being able to rewind time, that felt like an integral part of that experience, and I never got it with the whole memory thing.
In a small bonus before we move on, Jack, you'd be pleased to know that only a year after you told me to, I started playing Life is Strange 2.
And it's fucking good, isn't it?
I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it quite a lot. I'm on episode 3 now, so we'll probably talk about that once we return at the end of January with our proper shows.
I love Don't Nod.
So
I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, me too.
Those guys are raw.
Next up, and I probably would have helped you go to bat for Tell Me Why if I'd played it, but I just haven't really, like, I've looked at it, but that's about it. But for me, those games are in the playing because it kind of immerses me in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, next year I'll be telling you how I wish I had helped you.
I'll tell you what, next time there's a really awesome Don't Nod game and it's kind of getting to around September, I'm just going to come over to Ireland and I'm just going to sit with you and just play through the game.
Yeah. Just chow down on some bacon jam while I play through
exactly, yeah. Lock you in a room and make sure that you play the game.
Right, up next, we're going Spice, we're going Swipe. It's a game I haven't played, but one of the reasons I'm going for it is because none of us have played it. Half-Life Alyx.
Yeah, I put it on here. I can't remember what happened with it not being in the best storytelling section, but like they had a real challenge here in making a story that fits in between Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2 and making it have any kind of effect on the overall story. And we're going to do spoilers here because I don't think anyone's playing this game anytime soon. But what they do to make this game have relevance in the grand scheme of things is that throughout the course of the game, or you get to a point where you find out that the G-Man, or this, you don't know it's a G-Man, but you think this, no, sorry, it's Gordon Freeman, apologies. You think that Gordon Freeman is in like the big kind of floating citadel in City 17, and you have to get there and you have to free him to help with what you think would then be the events of Half-Life 2. But you go through, the whole campaign and the trials and tribulations, and there's some incredible stuff. Like I watched the entire gameplay run of that game, and the levels of immersion that you see, and the things that Valve do with your hand movement and how you block like head crabs, and how it asks you to pull zombies away from things because you need to get to what's behind it, but you obviously, you don't really want to pull this zombie out of the way, but you have to, and it really kind of asks you to get your hands dirty with that kind of stuff is incredible. And you get up to the top and you think that you've got Gordon Freeman, but it's not Gordon Freeman in there, it's the G-Man. And G-Man's like, you are this person who's done all of this. And obviously, within the grand scheme of the story, G-Man has this thing with Gordon Freeman. And he basically gives you this choice that you take, and you end up at the end of chapter 2, Half-Life 2 chapter 2. And basically, instead of Alyx's dad dying, you take the place of Gordon Freeman, and Alyx's dad is free, basically. So it completely changes the roles of what happens at the end of chapter 2 for the purpose of saving Alyx's dad. And that completely throws like the timeline and the story into a loop. And it means that it kind of adds more anticipation and weight to, okay, if, Half-Life 3 happens, what happens now? Because we've got, split timelines, basically. And so that just adds all these more questions. And I think it was such a smart way to approach this game, to obviously for the purpose of, incorporating VR and making this a thing that people want to play, but actually still making it something that storyline wise has relevancy and weight to the Half-Life series. So obviously it's not going to win, but I just think that I had to mention it because I think that's a really smart way they approached it. And it's not surprised because it's the people behind Firewatch, so or they were involved to some degree. So.
I just wish it was available in a more playable format, like for me.
They did mod it. There are mods for it to be like playable on PC, but obviously
do you want to play a VR game modded to play non-VR? I don't know.
Apparently that version is okay, but there are a lot of aspects of that game that clearly it's like you have to be hands-on in a way that just doesn't work if you're not in VR. But apparently the non-VR version does work okay.
I kind of like it wouldn't have won, but like thinking about it now, like I almost want to put like making the long-awaited new Half-Life game VR in the Konami corner. Like that's like that is kind of a gigantic fuck you to the people who've been waiting. And I know Valve love to push the envelope.
Everyone said for ages that like as a joke that's what they do. Yeah. And then when they did it, I felt like it was surreal.
They were like, surprise.
Yeah, because Valve love to push the envelope, and there was rumors it was VR, there was rumors it was open world, all this other stuff, and it's just like I can't believe they actually did it because those long suffering people have been waiting for quite a while. But anyway,
next up we have Jack.
Oh no. Right, we're into some stuff here. Of the things that are left, Gears Tactics. Anyone want to jump in for?
Yeah,
that's a Barry joint.
Yeah, I think that was also a early in the year shout out. I didn't even finish it. Like it's very good. It is really good. It is Gears license on XCOM. It is also, I feel, as someone who's always kind of liked the idea of XCOM but bounced off it, I found it way more accessible than XCOM. They have like a story characters basically cannot die in a permadeath fashion, right? And then you have these additional characters you can recruit who can die, and you can build them up and all. That's great. And then if they die, they're lost. I think that's a nice little balancing act. Whereas if you fuck up in a mission and a story character dies, they just say, okay, you have to restart the mission. Which I think is a very nice balance of hey, I want that XCOM challenge, but I don't want to be punished. So yeah, it's a fantastic XCOM like with a solid license thrown on it. But yeah, not at all a contender, I don't think. Not at all.
Okay. Barry.
For it's been discussed in depth in other categories, the positives and the negatives. I don't think Spiritfairer is a top three at all. No. Lovely game. thought-provoking and interesting and beautiful in a lot of ways, but not a big boy.
No. Mark, are you gutted or are you happy to see it go?
I mean, I only ended up playing a few hours of Spiritfairer. I feel just, and I've mentioned this like on the podcast before, that it's a little bit slow in the first few hours. Sorry. And just a little bit too slow for me. You know, I can see the tangible qualities. I can see the elements of what makes the game magical, but it was taking a little bit too long to get from like one area to the next area, and I didn't know, or I couldn't tell if the game was going to get quite grindy, but it also kind of felt a bit grindy in certain aspects of it. And I really did wish I had stuck with it or was playing it on Switch instead of the Game Pass. But yeah, like there are clearly like a lot of things that are quite I don't know if magical is the right word to use, but just very like touching certain sensibilities and emotions that not a lot of games do. But I didn't spend enough time with it, and I couldn't go to bat for it.
The music was to me the best thing about this. Like I fell in love with the music when I listened to it.
Yeah, I mean the overall production and presentation, it's a very, very pleasant game to be in that world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Mark.
I'm getting the sense that this hasn't been picked yet because no one knows what it is other than me. So it's not winning, so I might as well take it off now. The Pedestrian is actually low-key like the best puzzle game of the year that no one plays because it was released on Steam, and I think it had a console port, or I know at least it was announced. But it's also like a fucking gorgeous game. It's really pretty. I mean, honestly, there's not like a whole lot going on. It's like a lot of backdrops that are just really well designed, and there's a polish and a sheen. But like the general premise of the game is that you have, say, like 6 like boards in front of you, and you have like a little character that can kind of jump between these boards, and there are different doors that you have to go through. And honestly, it's been so fucking long since I've played it that I can't actually remember a lot about it. But I do remember, like, just thinking that, hey, this is a really cool concept, a very clever concept. And I do wish that it just had been available on more platforms, because I would have been, telling you lot to definitely spend some time with it. And again, I can't remember if it has had its console port or not. But it is, because this hasn't been a year with a lot of, like, standout puzzle titles. And I do think that the Pedestrian is way up there. It's just, just not enough people had a chance to get to it.
Yeah.
Right, so we've got 10 left now, guys. So unofficial
right,
top
okay.
10.
What?
Unofficial top 10.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like that top 3 the way it is. I like that top 3 the way it is. Let's go home.
Right, so just to read out what we've got left: Last of Us Part 2, Paradise Killer, Ghost of Tsushima, Ori and the Will O' the Wisp, Paper Mario, Origami King, Hades, If Found, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Animal Crossing, New Horizons, and Astro's Playroom are left on the list.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm up next. And I think I'm going to spice it up, gentlemen. Because I don't think this is going to finish in the top 3, much as we talked about some moments from it. And, with having a nice visual style and having some nice music and things like that. But I think we need to kick this top 10 off with a perhaps controversial swing. And I'm going to go Paper Mario.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Aw. I was hoping more sharp intake of breath.
I mean, it's a very good game, Dave.
Is it top 3...
I have struggled to determine what my top 3 games are, and Origami King definitely hovers around there. I feel like I have, at least one game that I'm absolutely surefire, yes, that's on there. It's been hard for me to kind of come up. It's why when we have our articles and they're posted, like, I'm not doing a top 10 in a specific order, because I have no idea how I would order a number of these games around. On the basis of that, and on the basis that this isn't my personal top three, and so I know that there's definitely going to be some other games that are going to be up for contention, and I have to pick and choose my battles. It's probably not going to be in the top three, but I do think that the Origami King is a really, really well put together game for a number of the reasons that we've established. But it holds true throughout the experience. There are a couple of moments where it does get a bit long in the tooth with some of the quests, the fetch quests going back and forth in some areas and some aspects. Like the desert section is a little bit long for my liking. But again, had my moment in the year with Bobby, I still think that that was the correct call. I think that moment is incredibly powerful. And again, it's in a Mario game. It's insane. And I know some people kind of got a bit sick of the circular grid system, but I think that they vary it up and keep it interesting. And I think the boss battles are incredibly varied for what they do. And the fact that you're fighting against a giant stapler and a giant pack of pens that acts as rockets, there's just so much creativity and imagination that a lot of the bigger tiered AAA games just are lacking. But
sense of humor in a Mario game as well, I think, for a while.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, a lot of those, like the RPG, the Mario and Luigi series on the Game Boy or the handheld series, and the Paper Mario series in general has a lot of the humor that is just kind of tucked to the side in the series and is left off of the mainline series. And there's a part of me that wishes a little bit more of that would kind of cross over, but I guess it's just not going to happen. But I don't know if anyone else is going to put up a fight. I feel like maybe it's me and Jack that are the high men on it, but if that's the case, it probably does go.
100% with you, Mark, on that. I think the next frontier for mainline Mario to do, in terms of reinvent itself for another big bombastic 3D open world game, I think it has to have a better story. I think these games, they got it. There's, and plus it's fucking Super Mario. You could go to Hollywood. You could genuinely go to Hollywood and get Hollywood family animated film writers to make it great. And this game is evidence of that. Maybe this one's a little too cheeky. Maybe it's a little too out there for a mainline Mario game. But it's proof to me that world can have a story. And as great as Odyssey was, I don't think you can really reinvent the wheel anymore with platforming. I think this game.
I mean, in fairness, Nintendo have done that about 10 times at this point. So
yeah. But so I do think story is the last kind of frontier for that franchise, and I think this game indicates that well. I mean, I don't think it's going to be in my list, but it is very good. I think if just the game aspect of it was stronger, I'd maybe say, yeah, we'll keep it on for another round. But I was, it's when it came time to do, whenever every now and then you'd pull at a puzzle piece, or you'd smash something with your hammer, and then enemies would jump out. I always kind of went, ugh, I just want to keep exploring the world and the characters and the story. I just didn't really enjoy playing it.
I like the touch that as you get more powerful, you can avoid a lot of those fights, especially against Goombas. You can just jump on them, and it definitely. I think they're aware that the combat system does get a bit tiresome towards the end, and it gives you ways of getting out of having to have that many fights towards the end. But I feel like that. Yeah, but I feel like that's kind of you're solving a problem that you shouldn't have. It's a smart solution, but if you're having to do that, then you're kind of commenting yourself that, all right, this does get a bit tiresome after a while. So, and just to go back to the mainline series point, what that mainline series actually does need is Waluigi, but that's a point for today.
I just want to say that I probably think, I mean, this is another game that's top 5. But like Mark, I can't decide whether it's a top 3 game for me. I think it's brilliant. It won't shock anyone to know that a Paper Mario game I happen to find fantastic. I kind of have, I guess, the same gripes. I mean, the battle system does get a bit irksome after a while, and I'm a guy that's used to a sort of turn-based combat thing, and I'm normally happy with it. But it's clever, and when you do it at first, it's like, how you've got the different ribbons and the different areas. If that was the battle system for one area, and then maybe they varied it up area by area, then it would have been fine, because you would have been used to it. And yes, you can kind of just smash stuff with a mallet and jump on stuff later in the game. But really, that's my only knock. I think it's a brilliantly told story. It's emotional. It's funny. There's great characters in it. It looks freaking beautiful, as we've mentioned up to this point. I really don't feel like it deserves to get knocked out here, but if nobody is like really scrabbling to hang on to it, then I guess I have to just let it go.
I mean, look, when the record books show, it's just going to show the top 3, so I'd rather get this headache out of the way now, and move on to the next.
I mean, in terms of things I'm going to throw my weight behind or try and put over, then I don't think it's going to be Paper Mario, even though I love it. I do really think it's very good.
Okay, so goodbye to Paper Mario. Jack, you're next.
Whew. Tell you what. Yeah, you're getting to the territory now where it's like, you're going to hurt somebody's feelings the next swing of the axe that you take. So, I mean, there is a coward's way out, but I really don't want to take the coward's way out, funnily enough. If Animal Crossing isn't winning best multiplayer and Fall Guys is, and then Fall Guys is going out, is Animal Crossing hanging on this list?
Probably not. I mean, yeah, it's on my list for the year, but it's not top 3. And we spoke about how unifying and lovely it was earlier on in the previous category, but ultimately there were some kind of gigantic road bumps in that game. The first timed event I didn't like. I don't know about any like or Dave, the point where you have to level up your island to a 5-star island, the tasks involved in that are so goddamn menial. And I know that might sound redundant because it's Animal Crossing and it's kind of menial tasks, the game.
Yeah, there's a balance though, isn't there?
Yeah, it's like there was a whimsy to the first couple of days, or dare I even say weeks, where it's like you're not just doing menial tasks. Every time, almost every other day, I felt like you've reached a new milestone. Here's a new aspect of the game that we haven't shown you yet. And I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. And then when you got to that stage, it's like, now you are going to grind. Now you are just, and that's when I was like, I'm good. And I simultaneously greatly appreciate Animal Crossing, but I also found it, my first experience with this franchise, to be actually very frustrating, and I wish I was going to fight for it here and say, no, it has to stay, it's wonderful, it was so cheerful and peaceful and happy, and oh, my house is so wonderful, and it's like, but realistically, there were some fumbles in that game, which is why I think it's not going to hang here, but solid showing for it.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so it's Barry.
See, now I was going to take Animal Crossing also because I knew it wasn't going to win.
Yeah.
And now this is proper. I have to take a swing at something here. There's one here that's just like, like, oh dear. I was going to do it. If found, it's great. It is great, but it's at this stage it is literally just, look, there's everything else here is a passion project, both either for me or for someone else, and I just, it sucks. If Found is great, like, it's great.
I suppose what I would say about it that would make me kind of fine getting rid of it at this point is that I think, we gave it its due in story, and I think it's an incredible story. I think it's an incredible visual style, which we gave it its due for as well, and it's incredible music as well. But the one thing in which maybe it falls a little bit short is as a game, because there's not actually much game to it. It's probably one step removed from just being a visual novel. So, like, I love it. It's already finished much higher than I thought it was going to, considering, it was myself and Mark who were real, like, passionately to the point of emotional behind the game. So I'm glad that it got its victory lap. I don't think it's going to be top 3 for me, let alone the consensus top 3. So,
see, my top 3 got thrown into a loop because of If Found. Like, this game just took me by surprise at the end of the year here, and it's interesting that you say that about the aspect of it being more like a visual novel, more like, or an interactive novel, whatever. And this is me we're talking about here, but for the 2-3 hours that game lasted, I didn't at one stage ever have an issue with what that game was in terms of its gameplay. Like, I never was like, oh, I wish this game had something more to it mechanically. That never was an issue for me, because I found the whole erasing of the diary entries and erasing of the screen, something equivalent to like an oddly satisfying type of experience. I don't know, I found something very immersive about that without needing anything more added to it.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is that I completely agree with what you're saying, and I think the way you interact with the game works perfectly for what it is. But what I would say is I'm looking at what is likely to finish higher for me personally, and I'm looking at games that had both an emotional impact on me, like If Found had, but I also enjoyed the actual game mechanics of as well. I'm really trying to figure out some way to separate and be okay with If Found coming off, and that's just the way I've gone with. It doesn't discount how special it was, or how, it's probably around that 4th or 5th spot for me. And it's something I reflected on when we first started talking about it, that maybe 6 months from now, when it's ruminated and sat back, I'll remember it more fondly than most games from 2020. But
look, you said this game made you cry 3 times. All right.
Tear up. Yeah, I wouldn't say I was bawling, and
I will qualify that as crying. All right.
I did it in one sitting as well. So if you want to talk about most emotionally impactful game of the year, absolutely. But if you want to talk as a whole package, there is other stuff here that I'm probably more in favor of fighting for, you know what I mean? Especially considering, I get the feeling that it's yourself and myself against the world here, Mark.
Potentially. I don't know. I would fight for it, but I definitely feel kind of outnumbered on this one. And again, as I said, I've struggled to kind of determine what my personal top 3 would be, and it's because If Found came in and was just like this tiny sort of explosion of talking about being trans and Irish culture and the mid-90s, and how it kind of throws us all together and touches all of these subjects in a sensitive way but in an impactful way. And it nails the target on everything that it's trying to do here, which clearly, I don't know the specifics between on the people that made this game, but they clearly there has to be a whole bunch of that. The best example I can think of is that Dragon Cancer, in terms of someone who made this has to have had a personal impact with this. And there's not enough games that do that clearly have a personal stamp on them, because obviously games are impossible to make by 1 or 2 people, but those types of games are, I wish there were more games like that, and it's why If Found just fucking grabbed me so hard.
The comparison is great. It's very much in the vein of that Dragon Cancer, or The Beginner's Guide is another one that's very kind of haunting and affecting as well. Those kind of small games that came and went, and I kind of wish had a better legacy to them, or remembered kind of more widely than they are. And yeah, I love it. And look, again, like I said, it's probably 4th or 5th, but I'm looking at 2 games that I will I need to be in the top 3, and then a bunch that I'm kind of oh, I like these, and understand that everybody else likes them a lot as well, and one of the spots is definitely going to be taken up by one of them. So I'm trying to think tactically and not draw too much blood when I might need allies later.
All right, I've said my piece. I've defended you well, If Found, but I guess it's time. So I'm very sad.
You think about some of the big boys it outlasted on here is amazing. In 2020, it outlasted Animal Crossing and Fall Guys. It outlasted a Half-Life game. It outlasted Paper Mario.
Which none of us played.
Yeah, but still, just to say it outlasted Doom. You know, it's like it's done well for itself.
For like, and like when you look at our history of like games we've awarded, like I would consider myself a lover of a good story game, but generally speaking, in these awards we haven't gone with a lot of the, again, it's not strictly a visual novel, but it is bumping up against that genre. I mean, it's made a tremendous impact on basically this whole show, and it's beaten out a lot of stiff competition. I mean, it is a spectacular experience for the time it lasts. It's great.
And now that your story, Robbins, maybe 2021 is the year for a story game to win. Who knows? Watch this space, I guess. Next up, we are staying with Mark.
Okay, I don't quite have the energy to go for some of the bigger ones here that I'm not that invested in. So I think of what is on here, what is most likely to... I'm going for the path of least resistance. And I'm basing that purely on... You know, maybe the fact that this is more of a... And, you know, I so fucking want to play it, and I can't wait till the day that I do. But I feel that even within the grand scheme of how good it is a very well put together, glorified, qualified tech demo more than anything else. And so I'm going to go for Astro's Playroom, and then I'm just going to walk away.
Like, it's not winning, so I can kind of... glorified tech demo, Robinson. I should come over
but
to
the thing is, Barry,
I'm saying that on the ignorance of not having played it.
Like,
so.
I don't know about you, but I did think that this was a glorified tech demo, and then I played it and I realized no, it isn't. It's a fully realized game.
I suppose a glorified tech demo is why it exists, but that doesn't necessarily mean that is all it is.
What it is a fucking brilliant platform game, like really fun. Just all the way through it, you can't wait to like get into that next level and find all the puzzle pieces and put stuff together. And it's one of those games that, like, you know, a friend of the show, Matt Niner, like, he had his like his little girl playing it, and she's like 3 or 4 years old, and she was having a ball, and me at the age of like 33 now, I played it, I'm having a ball with it. It's just brilliant. They've managed to craft something so unexpectedly great, and I think that part of that is the reason that it's still on here. The fact that this game just came packaged, it's maybe the thing that's come packaged with a console that my favorite since Wii Sports, where you just get this thing that becomes something that you're not even expecting. But I might not have even played the game if there was like even other than something else that's still on this list, if there was like an even bigger tentpole release, I might not have made the time to play Astros. But the fact that I did, and when I started it, I knew I wasn't putting it down till I finished it. It's one of those things. It's like, it's the equivalent of a book that's a page turner. Like, once you started it, you just want to play through the rest of the game right then and there. You want to complete every aspect of it. You want to platinum it. You want to go through the speed runs and try and beat your mates. Like, you know, you got into a couple of back and forths with a couple of people on the scoreboards and things like that. Like, it just brings me joy. It's a brilliant celebration of everything PlayStation as well. Like, really cool, like, nostalgic stuff that they managed to put in there. Like, not only is there references to all the great, like, hardware of PlayStation over the years, but every single game is, like, nodded. Like, there's a little nod to, like, Uncharted, and little nods to, like, Spider-Man, and, like, there's just... It's so artfully done and so lovingly crafted. You know, I don't know what it is. When people layer references into things but don't, like, hit them out of the park, they just do it but and put it, like, somewhere for you to discover in the level, like, not even as part of the actual gameplay or something you need to discover to get any rewards or anything in game. I just think it's a very fun thing to do, and it's so good for what it is. It has no right to be as good as this, don't you think, Barry?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it just blows away. Even, like, hearing before I got the PS5 that, like, oh, this thing is really great, make sure you play it, I was still blown away. I mean, it's similar to the Astro VR game. It's just like a constant smile on your face. Like, it's just around every corner. Like, I remember just laughing so much when I, like, got to the GPU jungle level, and, like, I was like, I saw, oh, there's little, like, robot Aloy, like, hunting a bunny with like
Yeah.
a plastic, but just like they're all great, and just there's so many little nuances and details to it, like in that same level when you're climbing up a cliff, but the platforms that you've made jut out of the wall, they are the adaptive triggers, and so they slowly click and smush the way the triggers on the controller do when you land them. Like, it's just 1,000,001 little things. It's not just, this song or this moment or this bit. It's just like every second, every corner and nook and cranny of the little world they've crafted is just designed to just make you smile, and it is fantastic, and I'm glad it got its mention here, and I'm glad that the PS5 is so popular, because I don't think this game will be slept on. I'm fairly sure.
And it shows off the
I wish for my convenience it was a tiny little bit less popular, to be honest.
Don't know what you're talking about. I mean, mine's great.
It shows off the range of what you can do with a controller so well as well. Like, all of the things that you can do, like, with the trackpad and the ball rolling and the adaptive triggers and the climbing with like the monkey suit thing, and the tech demo elements of it never feel irritating. They just feel like, because that DualSense controller feels fucking great. I don't think I don't know how much I put it over, but like just how the controller feels and stuff in your hand and the PS5, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's like, and like them like bigging it up. Like, to be honest, when they did the PlayStation reveal, I kind of just rolled my eyes like, okay, market speak. You've called it the DualSense instead of the DualShock. Who cares? Adaptive triggers, whatever. That's been done before. Oh, you're aping the Nintendo HD Rumble thing. Don't care. That's all just, it's like a PowerPoint presentation they were doing. Like, this game gets you on board with that stuff in a way that you'll play this little 90-minute, 2-hour thing, and you're like, okay, who's coming out with something to do with this controller next? Because I want to see it. And it's like it alone jumped the controller to the front of the queue of things that are cool about this generation, more than like 120 hertz or solid state drives, although it's close. Miles Morales loads very fast. Like, the controller is just suddenly this thing I'm most excited about messing with. And that's entirely down to Astro. So kudos to everyone involved in that. And now I want, after this and the VR game, I want a full standalone Astro game. Let's do it. Put out a full game. He deserves
I would
it.
pre-order it tomorrow if they announced one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because the same team to work on it that worked on this game. Give me, like, if this game, like, I don't know about you, Barry, but say this game had like twice the levels and like one or two more things to do, then it would have classified as a full game, and I probably would be standing it even harder right here to stay on this list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so with that done, it's down to me. Bollocks.
Yeah, we're in that zone now.
Oh. Looking at this list, and I'm seeing two are jumping out to me. Oh, might go Path of Least Distance here, because I know it's one I nominated, and I really like it, and it got better the more I played it. Like, it started off as that's a good one of those games, and by the end of it, I was like, I want to keep playing this fucker, and I platinumed it, and I really, really like it, but I don't think I'll get the pushback I will with the other thing I was thinking of. So, Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, I'm probably the other person who I think anyway, you and I are the two. Kind of like yourself, I was initially like, oh yeah, this is solid, fair enough. And then the more time I sunk into it, I'm like, this is actually really, really good, and kind of slept on. I feel like when the reviews came out and they were on like the low end of the very good scale, if that makes sense, people were just kind of like, okay, yeah, I guess I'll get to it at some point, or okay, I'll get it on sale or whatever. I hope they do. I hope that game is heavily marked down this Christmas and New Year, and people get it, because it is great. Like, it is genuinely a great game.
I think something that you said earlier on really struck with me, Barry, is so you were mentioning about how great the scripting of the side quests is, how great some of the little stories there are. And I think that's something that a lot of people who bounced off it early, and it was certainly part of my early impressions when I was telling Mark and Jack about it, My problem was that probably the least, at least at the start, the least fleshed out or interesting thing about it is the main story. So the more I got into the side quests, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. It's a little bit unique, you know, it's something a bit different here. Whereas I think in Act 1 and 2, a lot of the critical path stuff, the story beats there are very kind of bog standard, like something you'd expect out of a Kurosawa revenge flick. But something that remains strong from start to finish there, I think, is the gameplay. And something that kept me going to the point that I did platinum it is because even though, like all open world games, there are there are some side quests that are completely unique, but then there are some that kind of, as with all open worlds, are variations on a theme. And even within those, I think there wasn't enough of them for me to be like, oh, for fuck's sake, I still have, you know, X, Y, and Z of these left to hit. I really enjoyed, I can't think of the name of them, the side quests where you have to get the button combos to smash through the bamboo.
Oh, bamboo strikes. Yeah, they're really tough. They're really tough.
So for you guys who haven't played it, it's like in each of the major villages, there's a bamboo strike challenge, and it's essentially you stand in front of this plinth with 3 sticks of bamboo on it, and each stick of bamboo has a face button on it, you know, a square, circle, triangle, or X, and you have to hit it in the correct sequence in between. So your sword starts swinging as soon as you tap the first button, and you have to have tapped all of them correctly in sequence by the time the strike falls. If you get
it's not in slow motion or anything.
It's not in slow motion, and if you get through the 3-button combo, then it goes to like a 5-button combo, and I think is it a 7-button combo is the.
I think 7 is the last one.
Yeah, and they're really fucking difficult. Like some of them are done in a way where you're like, okay, yeah, the sequence here makes sense in my head. That muscle memory, I'll get it down. I just need to do it quick enough. But some of them are real thinkers, especially when I think it's when you get to the last area of the map, some of the bamboo strike challenges there just start throwing in the L1 button as well.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, what the fuck? So they do have that even within the side quests that are kind of a bit similar, that when you get later on in the game, they throw a new thing at you. And the gameplay design is really good in it for that. I think it's the same with the variations of enemies and the different fighting stances you can have, where like just as you're getting comfortable with one style of play, or oh, this is how this type of level or encounter works, they throw something else in there. I think a lot of the unlockable upgrades and moves and stuff are really fun, and really, you know, you get that kind of power fantasy of like, I am the most badass samurai that ever lived by the end of this game. I'm fucking taking shit down. I got, you know, towards the end of the game, and particularly when I was in the post game, I got really into all the customization of the gears and the dies and things like that. I think a lot of those, you know, loadouts you can have with your gear are badass. This game, like you said, Barry, because the reviews came out, and I think having played it through now, I think maybe the first impression, which, you know, is striking and then calms down for a long time, and it's a little bit of kind of, I wouldn't say tedious, but it's just kind of, like we said, a very good one of those for a long time. I think that has colored a lot of reviews for me. Whereas it is deeper and more interesting and more fun to play than a lot of those just standard open world games. So I love it a whole bunch, but I don't think it's going to end up on the objective top 3 here.
No.
I wish I played it and I could offer a more steely defense, and kind of like you were saying, Dave, with just getting around to Life is Strange 2, I'll get around to this next year and be like,
oh, Jack.
Damn it.
You're going to love this game.
I should argue for Tsushima. This thing looks insane as well.
Yeah.
Like,
also, can I just say those the standoffs in that game are among the coolest little gimmicks in a game this year, as are, I think Eddie, you'll agree with me on this, Barry, every single one of those proper kind of like boss battles where it's a duel in some sort of really visually striking little arena. Every single one of them is terrific.
It's fantastic.
I honestly can't believe it took somebody this long to just go, here's an idea, Kurosawa, the video game. Like, I'm surprised it's taken this long. But
I mean, I guess the closest we got in this generation before was Sekiro, but Sekiro was a Souls game, so it wasn't exactly as user-friendly as this.
Yeah, that's why I never bothered with that.
Yeah.
I mean, from everything that has been mentioned, because I'd been looking at it from afar, but I don't know. I feel like I'm pretty burnt out on the whole sort of open world genre game, but I don't know. It's so fucking good to look at that I feel like when I get that PS5, I'm gonna be like, look, I'm gonna have to, even if I only play it for a few hours, I'm gonna have to just fucking boot this thing up and see what it looks like running on that PS5.
Yeah, if you're burnt out on open world games, have I got the game for you? Cyberpunk 2077.
Right, okay, so that is me done, and it's to you, my friend Jack.
Oh my god. Damn it.
We are at the top 5 now, which just for recap purposes. Last of Us Part 2, Paradise Killer, Ori and the Will of the Wisp, Hades, and Spider-Man, Miles Morales.
Now, there's something, I'm pretty sure that if I went for 2 or 3 of these games, I would have my face ripped off. So I'm not going to come at those. I am going to come at the one game that it looks amazing and the soundtrack is brilliant and, everything about it looks fantastic, but I feel like the other games on the list above it are either bigger passion projects or had more of a lasting impact. And I'm going to say Ori and the Will of the Wisp comes off the list here. Dodge.
Yeah.
Dave, you go first.
Yeah, Dave, you go.
Yeah, so I really like this. I think, I said it earlier, I think it's a more refined and tighter package of what they were trying to do with The Blind Forest, the first game, way back when. Like you said, you touched on, Jack, there, I think there's a lot of really striking elements to it. I think visually it's just a stunning game. I think the music is incredible, as we've already touched on. I think it's a really fun game to play, and again, it's all sharper and more clarity of thought into it than the first one. It's definitely a substantial improvement on the first one. However, when I look at the remaining 4 on this list, I see 3 really strong passion projects and kind of an absolute landmark for a lot of things. So it probably is, if it's not going off now, it's probably going off next, in service of keeping someone's passion project on. So I'm sad to see it go. I think more people should play it, especially when it's on, Game Pass. Thanks, Uncle Phil. People should get round to that at some stage, but yeah.
I think that I mentioned this in another category when talking about this game, that it is definitely up there with some of the better Metroidvanias that have been played or have been created in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And when looking at what we've got left on here, I'm looking at games that either kind of either reinvent or add something new to a genre, are completely just fucking out there as its own thing, or as a game that I don't have much to go for, but I know that I'm not even going to go anywhere near that. So I know, Jack, you're not going to go for Miles Morales, so I do think that at this stage it's probably going to be Will and the Wisp. I do think that it's probably in my top 3. This game was, what was it, February, March?
Yeah.
And the game has stuck with me through the year. I never went back and did a 100% run on it. I tend to just get burnt out with a point with Metroidvanias. And I still keep saying I'll do that 100% run on Hollow Knight, but not anytime soon. But I think this game, it exceeds in pretty much every category, and I think that the big crucial thing is that it does expand on that first game. It does add a lot more in terms of the combat, because I think one of the things that I found very lacking with that first game is the actual combat is just non-existent. And Ori has so much more in its wheelhouse for fighting against enemies, and when you pretty quickly have a lot of ways to get around the environment, it's very satisfying to just traverse around that environment. between all of the different abilities you have, like it's, you feel not like you're a speedrunner, but when you chain together a series of actions and get from point A to point B to point C, it's very fluid like that. Oddly, very similar to Spider-Man. There were some similarities I felt in terms of I never wanted to fast travel because actually just going around the environment, manually was a way more satisfying experience. And I think that's always the testament to a good game, by making you opt in more for traversing around the environment that way instead of the fast travel. So it's in my 3, but these 5, something's going to have to go. And just the way the cards have been dealt at this point, I do think that unfortunately it's the one that's probably going to go next.
It is a phenomenal game, and like I don't think in the previous categories, I think you did a great job there summing up. Like it plays incredibly. Like it is a phenomenal video game. I mean, it's just like that beautiful movement, your options, your range of movement is incredible. The progress of like is so satisfying. When you get a new ability, it's exciting. It's like this is a game changer. It's not just I can go back and open that door. It's like I can change the way I move around the world. And it's ball achingly hard in parts, but it's that indicator of a great game where it's just like you just want to keep trying because it's never shitty or cheap. It's like, no, I have to go back and try and tighten this up and make sense of it. I mean, it's incredibly satisfying.
I guess we didn't even mention like the level design in general is just it's so fucking well crafted. And the good testament, as you mentioned there, Barry, is like a game can be challenging, but if it's done on good level design and not on like cheap tricks or whatever, that's it's the Mega Man theory put into practice. And Ori, Will and the Wisp has that in spades all around. And the diversity in the different environments and the secrets and the incentivization for exploration and being rewarded. It's just, it's a top, excellently, brilliantly, wonderfully crafted game that I enjoyed from top to bottom. And in another year, or if I was doing this by myself, it would be in my top 3. But alas, there's 4 of us, so it cannot be the case.
Sorry, guys.
To take the final swing before we go to our final speeches and our poll, it's Barry.
Oh my god!
Good luck, mate.
Okay, now so what we have left here, so the people know my plight, is Last of Us 2, Paradise Killer, Hades, and Miles Morales. Now, knowing where everyone stands on all of these, I might be controversial here and surprise people, and maybe I'll be told to fuck off. Will we take Hades off?
I cannot in good conscience have my game of the year be taken off this list.
Okay. That's what I was curious about was because like we've talked about it obviously a little bit in the various other categories, but I actually wasn't exactly sure where everyone was on Hades. Like it's in my top 3. It is absolutely in my top 3, but I was like I wasn't sure where the rest of you are, and I know Jack loves Miles Morales. I haven't finished it, but based on my few hours, I'm kind of willing to go to bat for it as well. Like it is fantastic. But if Hades is a top 1 and 2 for others, I guess I would have to cut Miles because Hades is higher than Miles on my list.
So for me, I probably have the least amount of thoughts on this particular conundrum because I've played Hades a bit and I like it a bunch. I think it sounds great. I think it looks great. In terms of playing, I was more of a Dead Cells guy back in the day, and I think Mark gave me the full heads up beforehand that he didn't know how much this game would jive with me, and I like it well enough, but I think it's only by virtue of the fact that I have not played 1 second of Miles Morales that Hades is in my top 3 here. I feel like Spider-Man is more my jam and would be on my top 3 otherwise, but I can't really put a game I haven't played at all into my top 3 over it yet.
I'm really fortunate that I came to Dead Cells about 2 months or so before Hades came out, and I hammered a good 10 to 15 hours into it. A little bit late to the party, but we got there. And, I think Dead Cells is fucking incredible. And definitely in the first, I don't know, I'd say 5 to 10 hours, I was enjoying Hades, but I thought that Dead Cells was way, way better. And I think I mentioned it on the podcast at some point. And that's purely just based on, like, the general combat just feels very slick and satisfying and fast-paced and dynamic. But what I've come to realize over time is that, again, Hades, and this is a Supergiant game, and like the way that they implement story into a roguelite, I think is a marvel. And I mentioned about how they justified the loop of going back around again. And I also forgot to mention like how they justify going, doing more runs after you finish the main campaign. It's so fucking so clever how it does that. But also that you have the different weapons, but then because you have like every run is different in terms of like the boons that you pick up along the way, and there's so much variety in how you like, even if you use say like the gun, the launcher, whatever you want to call it, for example, depending on the types of weapons you get along the way, like that launcher then can become just like a straight up grenade launcher or a rocket launcher, or has like a spread that has like a lot more range but is less powerful. And then you have the diamond that you have with you, which depending on which gods you run into, that can turn into like a blade disc that you just let loose in the room while you run around picking off enemies, or it turns into like a laser beam that homes in on like the nearest enemies. Like, every run it's interesting that Hades to start with kind of feels like Dead Cells in some ways, but then turns into Binding of Isaac in other ways, because every run does, and is the premise of a roguelite is that every run is different, but it does kind of bring those two worlds together, and its arc is like, they couldn't have fucking pieced it any better in just unraveling kind of little secret after little secret, giving a new character after new character, and having their stories unfold kind of piece by piece. And every single character in the game has their own story, has their own arc, whether it is, obviously Zagreus himself, or Hades, or fucking Cerberus, or, Death. Like, they all have their stories to tell, and it was one of those games that the more time I spent with it, the more I wanted to play it. And even though there are other things I needed to play, it's one of those, one more run, and a run could be anywhere from half an hour to 45 minutes, depending on like the weapons that you picked up. But with all of that, there was still the, you need to be good, you need to be fast, you need to have your reactions, you need to have all of that. You can't just rely on a good loadout to carry you through. So Hades is my game of the year I'm not going to say like by a wide margin, because there's a couple of games that do certain things. There's a game still on this list that's just really fucking weird, and I can't help but marvel and appreciate its weirdness. But yeah, Hades is really fucking special.
Alrighty, fair enough. I think at that stage I would have to say I would cut Miles Morales. I hate to do it to Jack, because he bigged it up, and I know he loves it. But I love the other three enough that I can't cut any of them.
I mean, I want to ask like Jack, because I don't want to just like bin it and then be done with it.
No, of course.
Because I do want to come to Miles Morales. I'm definitely going to play it, because I think Spider-Man is great.
Game of the year, some said.
Some say
sequel to our game of the year, yeah.
Like Miles Morales, how much of it, in terms of like, does it feel like a standalone game? Does it feel like an expansion? Because I've always found the marketing, but I always found that kind of confusing about like, what the fuck is this game exactly? Is it DLC? Is it an expansion? Is it a standalone game? Why are there, fucking 10 different versions of how to play this fucking game? Like, that's always been my kind of, I guess, one sticking point, is like, what actually is this game in the grand scheme of things?
So yeah, I think when they initially announced the game, it was kind of like, this is a continuation of the story, so it almost sounded like a jumbo DLC or something to that extent. I was still excited because I think especially like with all the Into the Spider-Verse related stuff going on in the wider media world, hearing like that there's going to be Miles Morales in game form was just kind of scratching that itch a little bit more. So to me, it just feels like a full-length game, really. I think there's definitely enough content in it for me to have felt satisfied, and I think it's like 30 or 40 quid at the moment, so it's a bit less than a full price game. But I think if I paid full price for it, not that I should admit this, just in case anyone's listening, I don't think I really would have been feeling shortchanged or anything. Honestly, the game, I loved it. I think, you know, it kind of moves the story on in a really interesting way, because obviously the cool thing about the first game, and I think kind of generally the way that they went with the third reboot of the movies was just like, right, Spider-Man is Spider-Man. We've done all this Uncle Ben shit, all of this origin story stuff enough times, so you just get on with it. Whereas kind of playing sort of Miles's first inclinations as a superhero is entertaining, because it's a character that we know less about, so you find yourself, it's easier to kind of get into somebody from the ground up kind of thing. And I just think they nailed everything about the game in terms of the things that they changed around. So, you know, in the first game, for instance, there was a lot of, you know, clearing out bases and stuff, and that's present in this game as well. But this time around, you can stay stealth, which is really, really helpful. Like before, you know, you could stay stealth up to a point where no one was seeing you and taking enemies out and stuff. And then no matter what happened, just a wave of dudes and then another wave of dudes just started happening. And, you know, there was no way for you to hide. You had to kind of go down and face them all. Whereas this, you know, you can even go back into stealth if you want, because you've got the invisibility metric, which some people might argue is a little bit overpowered, and that could be right. But I think what balances it out is the boss fights. I found the boss fights quite challenging, especially like towards the latter part of the game. I was playing on like the second highest difficulty, and I was finding some of the fights quite tough, because especially one of the final fights with like the Rhino, you've got to build up a certain amount of venom and stuff to get the job done, and it's really difficult because like there's constant waves of enemies coming at you in that boss fight, even though you've got someone to help you in that fight without giving too much away, because you're dodging and stuff, you're getting hit with things every now and then, and it's dragging your venom bar down and that, and I found that quite good. I think the storyline, I talked about it in the story section, I think it's brilliant. One of my favourite things I didn't really mention is the way that the side missions in this tie into the game. You have probably one of my favourite side missions I think, or like series of side missions I've ever done in a game in terms of building story around the character. Is obviously Miles's dad was a police officer he died in the first game, like protecting the people of New York, and his mother, for his birthday the year before, when around the same time that his father had died, he's got his dad to go to different landmarks all around New York and record stories about him when he was a kid. And this time you can play through those same stories as well. Like so you can go through those different areas, and you get all the backstory about Miles when he was younger and his relationship with his best friend in the game, who turns out to be pretty heavily involved in the story. And it really fleshed things out in such a nice like way, and like really kind of got me quite emotionally attached to Miles even more than I thought I would be. And I think the sort of the hollow combat challenges that they've added in are really great as well. And then you get like a sort of a hollow version of fighting one of the bosses from the previous game, but as Miles, which I thought was really awesome, and like a nice way to reward playing through all of those things. And yeah, it's just it doesn't feel like too much has been heaped on like in the previous game. There was a lot of repetitive actions, and just everything just feels more streamlined, and like you're not having to battle through stuff to get to the story. If you play straight through the storyline, that's fine. And you know, all of the crimes and the additional storylines and that they just weave into the narrative really nicely, no matter which point of the game you kind of pull and tug at them. So yeah, I just think they nailed it. I just think it's a very good game. And I mean, the way of you guys in terms of the other games that are left in this top three, or will now relegate Miles to fourth, which I think is fine. Maybe even higher than I thought it could get, because obviously I'm the only one. I mean, Barry has just started playing, and I'm not sure how deep into it he is, or what his thoughts would be on it. But yeah, I think it's so good. I think it made me excited for another game, and it'd be cool in the next game, I think, if you get like a real good blend of Peter and Miles as a team, because at the start of the game there was kind of the moment of Peter and Miles where like Peter was like the cool, confident superhero, and Miles was asking him all these questions, and he was like talking about how he's going to go off, and then at the end of the game, you know, Peter's just sat there, and then Miles flies in, and he's kind of upside down drinking a coffee, and seems like he's mastered it. So I think it'd be cool to have them two play off each other in another game, and the duel of the Spider-Men. Oh yeah, and there was no fucking annoying bits where you're having to sneak around in stealth in this game, which was the one thing
as
about
Mary Jane. Oh my
god, so annoying.
Oh my god,
so annoying
terrible.
in that first game. That was the only bad thing I can think about it that I can say. But yeah, I don't know if you've got anything additional to add to all of that, Barry, but yeah, I really love this game.
No, I mean, I would say I think I'm about halfway through. I've done a lot of side stuff because I feel like there is incentive to do it. I've got all the time capsules and stuff because there's interesting little character detail associated with them, which I really love. Yeah, I would echo a lot of what you said. Look, it's another very, very good Spider-Man game, and I would say possibly even better than the first one. Strictly from a story point, it's probably better. I mean, its biggest shortcoming is perhaps that it is very over familiar. I mean, it was like getting back on a bicycle when you first start playing it. I mean, it comes second nature to you if you played a lot of the first one, but it's they did do a lot of great work to really, really get this character and all these characters actually to mean something, which I really appreciate. And it is stunning on a PS5. I mean, it really is. I was playing for a while on the new mode they put out that's 60 frames with some of the ray tracing features, and it was really cool. I was like, that's a really impressive split in the difference, but I flicked back just to the standard kind of defaults, all visual features turned up mode, and I mean, it's just jaw dropping. I mean, it looks fantastic. And if you've been a Spider-Man fan for most of your life, as I have, I mean, it's probably the ultimate realization of that swinging around New York feeling as well. It's great. It's really fantastic. I think it's for a game of its size, which is a kind of standalone kind of half sequel, I think it's done an excellent job to hang as late as it did.
I really do wish that that and Astrobot, I wish I'd got on my PS5, because I would have definitely got those two games in before this to be able to add some sort of kind of merit to everything Jack has said, because would imagine that I would very much enjoy the game from everything that I know about it. But I don't know, just looking at those last three, one of them I have not much to say about, but I'm not going to get in the way of that debate to be had still just yet.
Yeah,
so.
I kind of echo a lot of Mark's sentiments there. I feel like if I had gotten to it, if I got my PS5 and played this game, I would be right up there along with Jack in defending it, maybe pushing for a top 3, who knows. But yeah, I kind of, because I know from everything Jack has said about the game and from everything I've seen about the game, I know it probably would have finished around here, so it would have felt disingenuous to try and knock it off early. So yeah, I'm happy enough with where it's placed here.
I think the main thing that I've always said that I really love about video games is when they just make me happy and they bring me joy, and this was just an absolute joy from start to finish. It didn't feel like a chore. I love the story, I love the characters. It just put a big, broad smile on my face, and probably the biggest smile on my face of any of the games that I played this year. And I don't know if that's because of the familiarity Barry mentioned, or the fact that it's Spider-Man and that's just something that I dig. But yeah, I think you guys would have had a blast with it, and look, you still can. But yeah, I look at these three games that are in the top 3, and I totally get it. I'm fine for Spider-Man to Miles Morales to drop here. It's all good.
I think now, so we're down to the top three. The top three are Hades, Paradise Killer, and The Last of Us Part 2. And I think, have we really kind of gone through the big cases throughout the categories on all of them?
Yeah, I mean, just before we cut Spider-Man, I said what I think we did a fairly thorough Hades run through. Obviously you and I, Dave, have talked through Last of Us quite a lot, and also in the previous categories, Last of Us got a big talking through. Have we talked much about? I suppose have we talked much about the crux of Paradise Killer? I suppose we kind of did.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of its elements rather than the whole thing as a package.
Yeah. So I guess it's time to probably just, Paradise Killer as a whole, why it's in the top three, which honestly, I don't think any of us would have been too surprised by when we started this.
Yeah, I think this was the one out of all of them I felt was a lock for the final three. I wouldn't be sure, because I think we tend to try and avoid feeling each other out too much on what's our number one or two. But given everyone's feedback in our group chat when we all got to this game, I felt confident this was a late runner. But it is deserving of that spot. It's not just kind of that we're trying to come up with a contrarian take on this. Like, as a complete and total package, this is one of the elite games of the entire year. It's so rare that a game goes out of its way to do something like do an investigation game with this kind of wit, this kind of art style, and pulls the whole thing off. There's a lot of spinning plates going on for such a small game in some respects. But there's very little to Paradise Killer that I can really criticize. I loved my entire time with it. It's a game I think I'm going to revisit over and over again, maybe like once a year or every couple of years or something like that, because it's such a great time. And something you and I, Mark, talked a lot about, I think, early on, many hours ago, when we were talking about game and moment of the year. The fact that they managed to keep everything spinning and stick the landing perfectly with the trial is something else that's just remarkable, because there's so many kind of interwoven stories. There are so many pieces of evidence. There is so much information being conveyed in the short time you're with this game that I think 99 times out of 100, someone trying to do this game, it would be very confusing, And I never really felt that. I never felt, after I got to know the people on the island, I never felt confused or lost. And I feel something that we maybe haven't hit upon with Paradise Killer, and I don't know if you feel the same, guys, is the way the menus are laid out in it and the way the evidence collects in those menus make the whole thing so much more convenient and easy, that if there's a thing you need to jog your mind, it's like, oh, what was that person's motive? Everything is logged very well in it. I feel that when you then come to the trial, you feel very well armed to make your arguments. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, no, I think it's also a combination of that. And I think the overall balance in that you have these different, because at the start you kind of think there's just the one main story beat being who killed the council, but it gets interwoven with these other elements that are all kind of intertwined. I think maybe there's one or two that kind of feel their own, but there's enough that makes the whole thing, it kind of fully fleshes out the world, but it doesn't add too much that it's so overwhelming. So between getting the right amount of stories there, or cases, if you will, but also making sure that there's not too many that it's too overwhelming, along with the fact that the way the menu kind of lays everything out for you and makes the information easy to navigate it's a really good balance they hit.
And I think before I move over to Barry to give his kind of takes on Paradise Killer, something else I kind of wanted to hit on as well is I think that the kind of swerves and the bait and switching that happens at some elements of the plot where you start thinking, oh, maybe I'm heading in the direction of this guy being guilty or this woman being guilty. Some of the story beats that are kind of, for want of a better term, swerves are really, really well done. In particular, I remember I thought I had it all figured out, guys. I was like, I could go to the trial any time now, and I'm just kind of collecting the last few bits before I just go and do it, make sure everything's cleared out. And it was right near the end, I think I texted you about it, Mark, when I found the bunker. And when I found, I don't know how, because I haven't heard the name out loud, like Danangon or whatever, you know, the person that's in the bunker. When I found them and just like it completely shit me up. I was like, I didn't know what to think anymore for a couple of hours. It was like, it's just so good. I just have such fond memories of playing this. Barry, what did you think of Paradise Killer as a whole package?
Yeah, I mean, I just thought it was just incredibly satisfying, and like you were saying, the twists and the turns were great, because I kind of felt early on, I was like, okay, the most obvious thing that they are presenting to me is not going to be the actual answer, which is fair enough. But then once I thought I had down pat what the actual occurrence was, I was then proven wrong again after that, because early on I was like, okay, they're pointing everything towards Henry, but I don't think it's just going to be Henry. And then I was working on this theory that I was like, oh, it was Henry, but like he was goaded in and basically set up to do it, and that turned out to be wrong. And what I liked about this game as something that is supposed to be putting you in the role of an investigator, like every hour or so as I was uncovering more information, I found myself kind of stopping and running through my hypothetical timeline in my head. Like this is a game you could almost sit down with a notepad and scroll down your thoughts as you're going through to try and make sense of everything. I don't think you have to, but I think it's genuinely stimulating and fascinating the way it really engages your brain, you know, to solve what's gone on.
Yeah. And even on that Henry point, like you were saying, I think there's a meta level where the clues work on, because early they're laying it on so thick that you, the player, not even in character as Lady Love dies, you, the player, are thinking they're laying it on so thick it can't be him. And then, as you say, a couple hours later, I'm coming back towards Henry, and I was like, maybe it was this fucker all along. Like, they were laying it on thick so that I would go the other way on it, and it there's just so many levels that works on. It's great.
Yeah, it's just really, really fantastically done, and just, you know, like the way the various elements that we've previously talked about, the way they do come together in a really fascinating whole is great. I mean, it's just the kind of fantastical world. It's not just kind of a, you know, window dressing for the story. It does kind of enhance the mystery and the various moving parts of it all. So yeah, I mean, it was really fantastic. And plus, I also found that given all the moving parts, and there's a lot of moving parts in this game, I think the inventory screen, for lack of a better term, where you organize your clues and your people and your evidence and all that stuff, it's really well done for a game that has a lot of that stuff, and it could be easy to lose track. It's great that you can check in, and it's a very competent system to kind of refresh yourself and say, okay, this person said this, their relationship to so and so is this, I have this alibi against them, but that's countered by this. It's all excellently presented so that you can kind of stay on top of your game with all of that stuff.
Jack, your thoughts on Paradise Killer?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with everything that's been said. I do really like you've mentioned the Starlight computer, and the upgrades and everything, and how kind of well that compiles all the clues that you've built up. I just the Paradise Island and the theory behind it, and this, you know, constantly reinventing itself, you know, trying to get this perfect formula for like a utopia, and it always being corrupted, is just such an interesting setting for a game, and it's so unexpected that you've got like this weird big block genre mash of okay, it's kind of a Phoenix Wrighty type thing, but then it has that setting which sounds like it could be a Souls game or something crazy like that. And then you have this like freedom of exploration that makes you feel like you're playing a kind of action adventure sort of RPG-esque thing almost, and it fuses all of these things so seamlessly, and it makes sense. It feels like it would be a lot, but it even though kind of the amount of characters and stuff in it, because it has that Game of Thrones feel where it's like, the first few episodes of Game of Thrones you watch, there's so many characters in it that you're trying to keep them all like in order in your head, and what they do and what their allegiances are and stuff, and the in-game things help that, but none of it felt out of place or odd. Like once you get used to the style of the game and the pacing and everything just kind of clicked into place for me. I love any game that hands you freedom basically to explore. I think one of the things I've always loved ever since I was a kid, and especially because I was a massive Final Fantasy fan, is once you get through that first section of a Final Fantasy game or whatever, and you're just like, right, I can go out onto the world map and I can walk around, and I can't help myself. Like, I'm one of these guys, if I play a game, like I always want to do all the side quests before I move on with the story, or if there's a corner of a room, I'm like, oh, there could be an item there. Like I have to sort of check everywhere, kind of, not even in like OCD way, just in a general intrigue as to what they've done. So this game is kind of perfect for that mindset, where every like nook and cranny you explore, every path that you take, like whether you're climbing up a mountain or like, going into, like Dave said, into the bunker and stuff like it rewards you for it. Like it's actively encouraging you to explore around and just add more strings to the bow to build your trial cases towards the end. And I think that's what made me kind of really appreciate it. And the way it does culminate in the trial, and then even things that you kind of like, little side details that you forgot when you're at trial level. You're thinking, right, this is who I'm going to accuse of this thing and why, and then it gives you like the list of everything, like, okay, I'm going to, because this is my evidence, then like speak your truth. They keep repeating it, and as you're going through it, it even then gives you things that you maybe, I didn't remember that. So even when you're at trial, it's giving you things to think about, and you feel like you're going in decided, and then there's other bits and pieces that are collected there, and you're like, oh, actually, maybe this could be the factor that I'm looking for to accuse this person or whatever. And the whole thing is very, everything it does in a way, it uses mechanics that are present in loads of other games. You can compare it to loads of things, but it feels like a fresh experience. And I think anything that does that, it's kind of like any time a new musical act comes out and they're fusing genres together, but it makes something that just sounds like completely new, even though it's elements of old stuff. And that's what this game was for me. It's like a reinvention of genres to make a new genre. And I loved it. It was really, really good.
I have a few, because I feel like, if we're going to do this, we have to look at all of the positives and all of the negatives across the three games here if we're going to decide this. And Paradise Killer does have a few minor complaints for me to bring up that I'm pretty sure I've brought up when I was initially talking about this game way back when, and I think I may have even brought them up during the course of these last 9 hours or so. But I feel that the controls or the controlling, like the game isn't a platformer, but there are certain aspects of it when you're trying to get around some of the taller buildings to get some of the blood crystals that are on like balconies that can't be accessed unless you fucking jump off the top of one building to get to the other. A lot of that feels a bit janky, a bit floaty. It doesn't really work sometimes. So the game is not a platformer really in any regards. When it asks you to do platforming, it doesn't really work, to be honest. I think that and I definitely brought this up before, the dead zone is very underwhelming. They do kind of big it up to be something that it really is just there's just not that much there. I was really thinking this was going to be some kind of big set piece for the game, and it never.
And it didn't even need to be that much more.
No,
because there's a couple of cool revelations in there, but like if it had just, even if the scale of it had been a bit bigger or more dramatic, and you had the same story beats happening there, I probably would have been fine with it.
I think that Dead Zone is like the one area where the limitations of the animations, the art, all that kind of side of the game, like I think that's where, if they had someone who was assigned to do that kind of stuff, I feel like maybe there would have been more stuff in there. But I feel like just because the game is so kind of reserved in a lot of the ways where there really is no animation or anything like that, I just feel like there's something really kind of lacking there that really shows in just, I guess, just the lack of people that are working on the game potentially. So there's that. And the last thing is so all of the characters have their dialogue, but they also have vocal lines as well. But all of the characters only have a certain amount of vocal lines that they'll repeat. And for the most part, the lines will still kind of match up with whatever they're talking about. Sometimes it kind of goes off into Michael Cole and Taz commentary on those early SmackDown games where they're just saying fucking whatever, regardless with no kind of comparison to what's going on in the ring. But those lines also do kind of get repetitive after a while, and as much as I love the sass of Lady Love Dies, it gets a little bit tedious after a while. So those are my only kind of minor complaints. I don't know if anyone has anything else outside of those three.
I quite liked it for the reasons that you just said. In a sadistic way, it kind of reminded me of that classic video game thing of hearing the same things, like in the trial, the speak your truth over and over again. And I don't know.
I think there's a way in which you're kind of both right. You know what I mean? It's like it was like a happy accident that maybe the technical limitations or budgetary limitations on this small game from a small team.
I think it's their first game as well. Like I couldn't find any record of Kaizen Studios on any other game. As I found out,
the game's creative lead was also a designer on 50 Cent Blood in the Sand. So there's a pedigree there for sure.
I mean, stop the awards right now. We got to hand it over to him just for that.
But just the idea that like in a happy accident that the technical limitations have played into nostalgia in a way, like you say, Jack, reminding you of those old games where things were like that. And probably it's for the reasons that Mark has stated, but I think the effect of that will vary. Some people will see it as, this is kind of fucking annoying, like Mark has, fairly so. And some people go, this is very much like those old kind of games I used to play, like you have. And that was kind of the takeaway I had as well. So yeah, I think it's kind of one of those things where objectively it is a limitation, but your interpretation of that limitation is subjective in a way.
I think I don't know, my brain is probably more accepting of this. Like Mark is a guy who's like done game design courses and always will look at the technical parts of games and kind of how they work as a whole. And there's me who just like silly, dumb things and repetitive statements and humor. Like I tend to find.
Look, I'm fine with the repetitive statements, but after 20 hours in, I'm kind of ready to like just put a podcast on or something, or just have something else, because even I could have listened to Stay Forever for 20 hours straight, right? That is just fucking a perfect song.
I think it's just residually being fucked off that you didn't get that song over the credits.
Yeah, it's kind of like when I play Burnout Paradise and I just want to have Welcome to the Jungle every single time. But I just think those lines and those inflections, it's just, I don't know. I don't even think that, because my kind of comment on the restrictions was more to like the kind of art side of things, because if you got the people there, you can just have them record as many lines as you want. I just think that for the amount of stuff that they have there, I just think that Lady Love Dies saying "Don't test me" for the 89,000th time gets just, I don't know, it gets a little bit tedious after a while.
I don't know. When you just did that, I was like, oh my god, he said the thing. I'm such a Mark.
It almost becomes catchphrases by the end. But what you were going to say, Barry?
No, I was just going to say I was kind of charmed because I usually don't like that style where people record, a couple of sound bites for a game that doesn't have full VO. But there was something about Paradise Killers that I actually thought was really cool within that aesthetic.
And kind of the other thing that you were saying, like about the blood crystals and the platforming and stuff, that stuff for me reminded me of like, because I pretty much, before I had to go to any of the hard to find spaces, I had enough blood crystals to do everything I wanted to. So when I was going and trying to find the hard to get ones, or when I'd see ones in a hard to get spot, it gave me the warm fuzzies, because I was remembering games like remember like the hidden secrets in, say, GTA 3, where you'd have to like park a car into a dumpster, jump on the car, jump on the dumpster, go over the wall to find the dodo or whatever, or to find the graffiti on the wall on the third island in GTA 3, I think it was. Or that's what it reminded me of, when you'd have to nearly like break the game by going somewhere it didn't want you to go to find a little secret, is what it reminded me of. So that gave me, though I do concede exactly what you're saying, Mark, that like it isn't the best platforming game in the world, but for me that's not what I'm coming in for.
Oh god, no, of course not.
I'm getting this throwback feel to when I used to do this shit just for kicks, to see, I wonder if there is anything there.
Yeah,
also,
of course.
The harder something is, the more I'm like, no, fuck you, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Obviously, it's not a platforming game, and it by any means, but it has that in there, and I can only critique it for what it is. It's like, it's kind of like when you have driving sections in where, stuff like Watch Dogs and all those kind of open world games, and it's always the worst part of those games. And it's like, okay, obviously I shouldn't be comparing this to a Gran Turismo or Forza or whatever, but hey, there still is a driving section in this game, and it still handles terrible. So I just have to kind of look at it for what it is.
I think that the line for me where I start becoming fucked off and leaning more like on your side of things, Mark, is where, like, if I was trying to do those hard platform sections, and as well as being a bit unwieldy, I started clipping through stuff or falling off the world when I was trying to do it, then I'd be like, okay, right, this is just not working.
Yeah, and obviously, and by no means, I think you mentioned it, like, by no means a lot of those blood crystals are not crucial to the main core story or the end goal.
Yeah, they're kind of completionist ones, or if you want to start fast traveling a lot at the end.
But you probably wouldn't be surprised to know that as soon as I got kind of the main objective of what I needed to do, I immediately went in the other direction and spent the first 5 hours of my playthrough finding blood crystals.
Yeah.
So but look, Paradise Killer is great. There really is no denying that.
For sure. So what do we want to do? Do we want to feel each other out, or do we want to talk more about Hades?
Wow.
No, I'm just saying, like, I know we had started this little chat about Paradise Killer, about saying we kind of had the discussions about the other two, but what does everybody want to add at this point before we kind of see where everyone's at?
I mean, I will just say that I don't think another game, possibly until they make the next sequel, will attempt a story on the scope of The Last of Us Part 2 and nail it to that degree. Until, if and when they probably do another one. I mean, I just don't see it being done, because reflecting on what they did with that story, these two really excellent character dissections that are both fascinating in their standaloneness and also incredible in how they interweave and reflect on each other, is such an incredible achievement. And it's been something I that stuck with me, and I've thought about basically ever since I finished it. I mean, I do think, more so than the original game, which obviously won every over-the-top plaudit imaginable, I do think it's more of an achievement in storytelling than kind of almost anything else I could really imagine. If you just sit down and if you were to graph up the timeline nature of the game. It's like you've got this period, then you jump forward a couple months here, and then you're flashing back here, and then you flash back again, and it's like it's so risky and out there and ambitious, and they somehow nailed it. I mean, it's so incredible.
And something you and I said at the time when we did our big spoiler cast about it was they didn't have to.
No, right, absolutely.
Like, for the vast majority of the audience, they could have just given us the further adventures of Joel and Ellie, and a lot of people would have been fucking delighted with it, and it would still win countless awards. And I definitely agree with kind of the spirit of what you're saying there, and it is something as well we said on that podcast, which is we think we were at this level in the immediate days following finishing the game and hopping on microphones with each other. But the more time I've had to stew on it, and the more I think about it, the more of a special experience I feel like it was. Right.
Yeah. I don't think I have too much else to add really about that game or any of the other others that left. I think we've hashed them out all very thoroughly, and this is my top 3. As you know, if the listeners check out my list up on the site, this is my 3 favorite games of 2020, so I'm quite content with that.
My last thoughts on Hades would be, and again I think maybe I echoed some of these thoughts earlier, but I was pretty worn out on the roguelite genre. I really do felt like we'd kind of covered all tracks or bases for how a roguelite could be presented up to this point, but I do feel that Hades is kind of like the what Breath of the Wild did for the open world genre, Hades does for the roguelite genre, in that like I'm absolutely going to be comparing future roguelites to this in terms of, you know, there's no excuses now. You can craft a incredibly meaningful story into a roguelite, and you can have these characters, and obviously depending on what the game is, and you know, if you're using Greek mythology, you have a lot of material to work with, so good job there, Supergiant. But you know, just how it weaves all of that in and makes it all work mechanically and narratively together combined is really fucking well done. And how these characters not evolve, but just how their stories and the relationships with Zagreus do advance in certain aspects, and how they have these little moments, like when you go into a room and you can pick between the power-ups for 2 gods, and you'll pick one and he'll be like, oh, I'm so happy you picked me, and then the other one throws a piss fit, and then you have to fight a bunch of enemies and that specific god's kind of powers, and then once that room's finished, you'll come back to him or her, and they're like, oh, you know what, Zagreus, you're right, fucking just let bygones be bygones. But it's that same beat every time, but every god has their own kind of distinctive personality. So the way they like have the initial kind of transgressions with you, and then how they kind of get over it, like that they are different between each one. And I always, it never gets tiresome. Where I was talking about like the limitations that show in the vocal dialogues with Paradise Killer, there are no limitations with Hades. Like, it's incredible how much is there, and it's all the vocal dialogues is there like across everything that is said. So it's just astounding how much content is in there. And then just mechanically, like I never got tired of playing that game. No 2 runs felt the same, even though there's only kind of 6 core weapons. The amount of ways that you can change that weapon, and the different kind of power-ups and how they adapt and mold your specific run. There's just no 2 runs ever feel the same. So it really kind of nails that aspect that you should get in a good roguelite. But you got to find that kind of perfect balance of you progressing skill-wise, but the game also progressing with you in terms of the more options that become available to you. So, just overall as a package, again, like the way I look at all open world games now, and they just kind of don't do anything for me, because, Breath of the Wild is as fucking perfect as an open world game you can get. Hades really does do that for the roguelite genre, and obviously I think a lot of it comes down to your feelings on the roguelike genre, because it's not the most immediate or accessible type of video game to enjoy. So I think that kind of puts it into a certain area where, something like a Paradise Killer has its challenges, but there's no, the only obstacle really there is you choosing how much of that island you want to explore. Where with Hades, and it does have options to, like ease down the difficulty significantly so you can, enjoy the story. Like Supergiant is very accommodating for that kind of thing. But, if you just kind of jump in and just start playing it as normal, like it, there is definitely a curve that you have to go to. And even now, the fucking third boss with the ball and the guy whose name I always forget, like that, even if you have a perfect run and you have the exact layout you want, those two are still a fucking nightmare, even 30 odd runs in. And I still haven't seen the true ending yet. Like I've done I've seen the credits, but I know there's kind of like a further ending, so I don't know what happens there. But I really do feel that just like story-wise, I keep coming back to the story, even though I should probably talk more kind of mechanically about the game, but it's just the fact that I'm talking about a story in all the characters and whatever in a roguelike game still kind of takes me by surprise, because like we have had stories in roguelites, but they're usually, I don't know, like the Binding of Isaac is just kind of like, here's the plot device at the start and then you go from there. It doesn't kind of advance too much from that. So yeah, I think Hades it's not perfect. I do think that some aspects of it aren't made entirely clear. Even like 25, 30 hours in, I was kind of stumbling across things in the menus that weren't, explicitly made obvious, like, hey, this is what that does. So, of the minor complaints I have, that is there. But like, technically I never had a single issue, which kind of seems like a weird thing to praise a game for. But after the fucking debacle of Cyberpunk, I guess, hey, I'm going to bring that up. So yeah, I can definitely see though that it might not be a favorite for everyone, and I think a lot of that is just the genre that it is, the difficulty that is there. But yeah, I think Hades it is my game of the year. It's a very close one too, I think, with this and Paradise Killer. But I would put Hades just a smidge above.
Right, Jack.
Hello.
Hi.
What's up? I can't comment on Hades at all. Really. I've watched quite a few runs of it, but then it kind of just falls into the category of what Mark was saying at the very end there. I just have no interest in this genre of game. I can see that this is a very good one of those. I can see that and I can understand that and acknowledge it, but it just doesn't appeal to me at all. In terms of Last of Us 2, I've watched enough and read enough about it to understand that it is a very kind of intriguing and enthralling story and stuff, but it also is kind of very it's a tough one. It's a tough one to like read about and watch. I'd imagine playing through it would have been even tougher. So I can't really offer too deep analysis on either game because neither one of them really moved me enough to want to play it. I was trying to frantically get the original Last of Us finished so I could clear myself to play Last of Us 2, but then just never quite got round to it, where other things just kept distracting me off it. And I don't know if that's no real knock on the quality of either game, really. It's just kind of the way the year panned out for me. So I think it's kind of unfair for me to to really offer any kind of in-depth cut down of either thing. So yeah, I think the soundtrack to Hades I prefer, like when we talked about that earlier. But yeah, I don't really have a lot to say here. So I think my dog in the race was shot a long time ago and is no longer chasing that fake rabbit. So I'm kind of here now to just sort of listen to the arguments and pick my way through. Of these three, obviously one of them I've played and know very well, and that would probably be something that I would end up going for. But yeah, of the other two, I know which one I think appeals to me more. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how the conversation pans out from you guys as to whether I have to get involved or not.
When it comes to Hades for me, like I wouldn't necessarily go to the extremes Jack has where like it doesn't appeal to me at all, but I would kind of go to something Mark alluded to where I'm kind of like over these games for the most part, like, and I think this is like like Jack said, a really good one of those. I love its look, I love its soundtrack, but in terms of what we've got left here, it left the smallest impression on me. And that's, again, no mark against it. Maybe on a different year where these two other games didn't come out, I would have ruminated more with Hades, spent more time with it, and it might be higher. I don't know. But given the weight of competition it's got here, it's distantly my third of three. Where do we want to go from here, lads? I have the option here that we can do a temperature check and see what our own personal 1, 2s, and 3s are. And we can see if something emerges as a clear 1 or 2 or 3,
Sure.
And go from there.
I'll give you my 1, 2, 3 right now.
Well, I was going to go in the interest of fairness, go in the order that we drew from the Wheel of Fate in this round.
Of course.
Lo, those many hours ago.
That was like 12 and a half years ago.
My word. Barry, you were the first that the Wheel of Fate drew in this round, so you have the inimitable task of giving us your temperature check first.
Okay, my 2 and 3 have alternated a lot. I think this may be different from what I said for my written list, but my 1 would be Last of Us, my 2 would be Paradise Killer, my 3 would be Hades.
Okay, so I'm just putting yours in there. Mark, you are next, and I believe your number 1 will come as no galloping shock to anybody.
Yes, I would have number 3 would be The Last of Us, number 2 would be Paradise Killer, number 1 would be Hades.
Okay, I am number 1 with a bullet, Paradise Killer. The Last of Us, again, in most other years, without Paradise Killer, an experience that was so special and dear to me. Like, I don't think I need to try and elucidate how I feel about The Last of Us. Myself and Barry have spoken at this stage on these airwaves for many hours about that game. I love it. I will probably, sometime next year go back through it again and see, what I missed, spend some more time in it. Really, really loved it. Love what an achievement it is on a technical and on a storytelling level. Agree with everything Barry said about the storytelling. It just unfortunately wasn't the slam dunk, the Dave Ryan game that Paradise Killer was. And then, as I kind of said before, Hades is a distant third for me. I mean that as no disrespect, so don't fight me, Mark. Jack, where are you at?
Same as you, mate. Hades 3, Last of Us 2, Paradise Killer number 1, and I feel harsh on Mark.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay. Now, I'm looking at this list, and I'm seeing a game that got 2 1s and 2 2s.
Yeah.
And I am seeing that as possibly the most consensus one here.
Honestly, I kind of felt from some point, I'm not sure exactly when, I kind of felt from the temperature check of the room that this was more than likely going to end up being the game of the year. And
I thought you were going to say it was from the moment you first heard the sax solo.
Well, there is that as well. But I think it would be fair to say that this game is going to be our game of the year, and I am completely fine with that.
Okay, well, we don't want to say that game now.
No,
unless anybody wants to fight it, will we lock that one in and argue over 2 and 3?
I think that's fair.
Okay. Got a big smile on my face. I'm putting that one in. So we have, I know the majority have Hades as 3 here.
Here's the thing.
As it was one man's number 1, I feel harsh just going, well, 3 of us have said it.
Not at all. Look, here's the thing. I I kind of felt like Hades may get to the top 3, but I wasn't 100% confident. And I'm kind of treating Hades, similar to prior years with the likes of kind of a Cuphead or a Celeste, where I know without a shadow of a doubt it should be a top 3 game. I wasn't 100% confident it would get into the top 3, but it's there. And I have no affiliation to The Last of Us, and I never will. But for all of that, I can see where it is obviously, in terms of doing things with narrative and story that very few games can get to, and obviously Naughty Dog are unparalleled for that kind of thing. I think some of that is a little bit overhyped. I think some of that is a little bit overrated, and I do think, and I
you just know restrictions are coming down again, and Barry can't come up to Dublin.
And I do think that sometimes it gets a little bit. Because it's a video game, sometimes the story and the game don't match up in a way where, the reveal, the twist of doing the Raiden twist with Abby, I think is a great idea. I think games.
Raiden twist.
Hey, Jack said it first. Jack said it some years ago.
I'm pretty sure Neil Druckmann said it himself. He went on the record. He's like, look, I love Metal Gear Solid 2. I think he said that. So I don't think that's sacrilege.
Can Metal Gear Solid 2 be third place in Game of the Year 2020?
I think that is a much harder one to sell on, Mark, especially to bump off a game he actually likes.
Yeah,
if we'd gotten rid of all of his and he was in the mood to burn the place down, he might be more amenable to it.
Yeah, I've played Metal Gear Solid 2 and I'm not having that fucking conversation. That's
because you love it so much that you couldn't possibly even put it in third.
No, I do not. And it's not even because of the fucking Raiden thing. But I do think sometimes the story and the game kind of stumble over each other where, you got one part of the game where you're chasing after Abby, but now you're playing as Abby chasing after Ellie. And I think that's just sometimes the agency is just completely taken out of your hands, and it's just, that can't be held because, this is what the story is. But I just think that it's being a little bit too clever by having, the story presented from these two different aspects and it can only happen in a game. You wouldn't have this happen in the film or whatever, but just there's that gamification where you're going around, I think it's the theater, and you're I think it's your Abby, and you're trying to kill Ellie. I can't remember the exact dynamics of it, but something about that just doesn't feel right. But these are kind of minor things, and I'm not the person to have this conversation. But with all of that, I still understand, these games are important. There's a reason these games are massive, and it's not purely just from the fact that, from a technical aspect and the visual presentation. They're obviously stunning. They're incredible. But they're just not for me. And part of that is just I don't deal with high levels of tension and anxiety, and these games would give me high levels of both of those, so I just want nothing to do with them. But, look, I was pretty confident that it was going to arrive in the top 3. And, look, it's there, and I'm there are games that have ended up in the top 3 in prior years that I have no time for. I didn't think Control was actually that great when I eventually got around to it, but hey, it's there in the top 3 last year.
I'll take a retrospective swipes now.
Yeah, well, I think as we all said at the time, I think it was documented from start to finish. The coverage of Control was that it very much wouldn't be a Mark game, but you should probably try it all the same, just in case this was the one we got wrong.
And hey, because I did.
This is a game we talked about off air that I love so much that not only was it my game of the year, but I've bought it again because I want to play all the expansions and 100% it.
And while we're at it, Super Mario Maker in 2015 for fuck. No, just kidding.
Which reminds me, I need to give you your copy of Control back, but we'll talk about that off air.
I think, what you said about Hades finishing in third place feels very linked to the cast, because if you look at, with the exception of that first year with Super Mario Maker in third, the third place every year has been the highest finishing passion project. So I got SuperHot snuck into third in 2016. Mark got Cuphead in third.
I'm not sure Cuphead is an outright passion project. I think it only feels
Well,
like
it
a
was
passion
at the time
project.
because the rest of us hadn't really played it.
Right, okay, of course, yeah.
Because I only played it when it came to Switch last year.
Yeah. I hadn't
By the
taken
way,
that to
it's third because
Dude,
it's not better
if-
than either Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey.
Yeah.
And
Well,
No, but
is a
that's not
fact.
the conversation we're having here. but yeah.
To be fair, like, yeah, if we had had that year over again and I had played it on Switch, I'd be with Mark to push it as far as he wanted, apart from Breath of the Wild. But,
Yes.
like, again, yeah, we're not having that conversation
It's
now.
not better than Mario Odyssey, though, is it?
28. Well, you're too much of a coward to play Cuphead, so what do you know?
I've seen it. It's fine, isn't it?
Third place 2018, Celeste, obviously a big Mark thing, and then me last year with Outer Wilds. So yeah, it's the real passion project highest finish. So it's a really good finish for Hades.
I don't know,
Looking at
like,
it that way.
is Ape Out not my passion project of last year? Or...
Oh no, we all loved
Okay.
Ape Out.
All right.
Yeah.
Except
Most of
Barry.
us loved Ape Out last year.
Good little game.
People
good
that
little
matter
game. Good
liked
little,
Ape Out last year.
good little middle of the list game.
Oh, were you a control boy with me last year?
I don't think I was big on any of the finalists, but I was probably a control boy, I would say.
What was you even doing here last year, Barry?
Well,
honestly?
listen, I've got to be a fair man. You know what I mean? It's not all about, there's not a Last of Us every year, unfortunately. I wish.
Unfortunately. Right, that looks like we're settled. So does anybody have any more final thoughts? And I'll announce our 1, 2, and 3 here.
I'm all good. I'm all good.
I'm happy with how they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like
so-
Barry from last year, where I'm like any of these three. I'm like, yeah, I like Paradise Killer, but
Right, so for 2020's Game of the Year, in third place, Hades. In second place, The Last of Us Part 2. And number 1 for Game of the Year 2020, it's Paradise Killer. Oh, I'm so happy. And of course, before we finish, we need to see what the people thought.
oh yeah.
And winning the People's Game of the Year with 34.5% of the vote, and I think by this we can tell who was able to lobby the most people to come and vote in the fan polling. It's Hades.
Oh,
I
wow.
have been vindicated.
Second place.
Fuck your
joint
perfect
on-
25.
Second place on joint, they both have 20.7%. The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima.
People love that Ghost of Tsushima. They really do.
It's a grower, that
It
game.
is a grower.
It really does grow in it, yeah.
I know.
Certainly
I
a
know.
shower as well.
Oi, oi.
I know Nina is the
Here
high
he is.
man of it. Like, Nina alone has convinced me to play that next year.
He was super high on it the whole way through, whereas
Yeah.
I started off going, yeah, it's good. And then, like, the more I played it, by the end, I was like, yeah, that was badass. It's not my 1, 2, or 3. It might have come close for my 3, but let's not open that can of worms again. And then in fourth place was Animal Crossing.
Eh,
That I'm not surprised by. That, for a lot of people was their kind of comfort game to getting through the misery of 2020.
Our number 1, Paradise Killer, received a single vote.
that one
Proving-
person is absolutely popping out of their shoes right now.
I
Proving
think that's
once
a big
and for
link
all
to
that the
cast
people
game.
know nothing.
We were
Yeah.
in line with the people in pretty much every category, and then this last one.
No,
was-
they know nothing. They know nothing. Right, okay.
Did Miles Morales
I-
get any votes?
let me have a look here. 1.
Ah, there you go. That's my ballot.
Half-Life got 1 as well, so Mark filled it out. And Fall Guys got 1 as well.
Oh yeah. Thanks, Jeff, for voting in our Game of the Year poll.
Yeah. Right, yeah, that's going to bring, after many, many hours, our 2020 Game of the Year deliberations to a close.